Well, we're saying goodbye today for a local attorney who we've had on News on 6 at 9 a.m. since the beginning, almost 2 years ago. Attorney Alexis Gardner is moving, so this will be her last show with us. Alexis, good morning. We're going to miss you.
Good morning, Dave. I'm going to miss being here.
So you're comfortable talking about where you're going and what you're going to be doing next?
Yes, I will be moving to Washington, D.C., and I'll be in the Federal Public Defender's Office there, which is the former employer of Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, you know, and I wanted to talk with you before you leave. We have to grill you on one more topic here. I wanted to talk about public defenders here in Oklahoma. Of course, you know, that's what you do. Criminal law is what you're in. And as a public defender in the state of Oklahoma versus federal public defenders, what's the difference in Oklahoma?
Well, I'd say essentially it's the same thing. It's the same work. You are representing the indigent accused. Indigent meaning poor people who cannot afford to hire an attorney. And whether you have a federal defender or a state public defender is based on what crime you are accused of committing. If the U.S. Attorney's Office is saying you committed a federal crime and they are trying to prosecute you, you'll be appointed a federal public defender. If you are in the state courts of Oklahoma and you're alleged to have committed a state crime, then you'll be appointed a county public defender.
So you use the term indigent, which again, that's what it is called, but essentially it's someone who can't afford it, as you explained. How are you determined to be that? Does a judge have to make that ruling? Does somebody have to say you can't afford an attorney?
So approximately 80% of all people ensnared in the criminal system are represented by public defenders. Overwhelmingly, people that find themselves being prosecuted are poor people. So it's almost a default that you're appointed a public defender if you are in custody. And you can't talk about public defenders without bringing up the Supreme Court landmark case, Gideon v. Wainwright, which we just celebrated the 60th anniversary of this year. But back in 1963, an innocent man was accused of burglarizing. He was accused of burglary. And he went before the court in the state of Florida and said, the Constitution says that I have the right to an attorney. I can't afford one, so please provide me one. And they said, no, that's only if the federal government is prosecuting you. Here in the state of Florida, we only provide counsel if you can't afford it, if you are accused of a capital offense, meaning the punishment is death. And so he appealed that, and then the Supreme Court said, no, the Sixth Amendment applies to all the states. And if you want to take away a citizen's liberty, that is their freedom, then you have to give them due process, and they have a right to counsel whether they can afford it or not.
60 years ago, not that long ago.
No.
Wow. So in terms of becoming a public defender, because I know, you've felt a calling in your life to be in criminal defense. So how do you become a public defender? Do you have to have a wide range of law? Kind of how does that process work for aspiring attorneys out there?
So becoming a public defender is just like any other legal job. You have to get your bachelor's degree, then you have to go get your Juris Doctorate. You have to take the rigorous multi-day bar exam, and then you have to be assessed basically by the state bar to make sure you're of good moral standing, because as an officer of the court, you have power. And public defenders essentially really do the Lord's work, modesty aside. But they say if Jesus was alive today, he'd be a public defender, because essentially most of the people, like I said, that find themselves in the criminal justice system are poor, they are disenfranchised, mental illness is rampant, drug addiction. So public defenders, obviously, they could choose a job where they make a lot of money, but if they choose a calling toward public defense, it's because they have a conviction to help people who can't help themselves. And it's a strong moral stance to say, I don't care what you did or didn't do, you're not going to have to face it alone.
I did want to ask one more question about, so public defenders, but then there are also lawyers who do pro bono work. So what's the difference? Okay, I haven't been assigned a public defender because my case doesn't qualify, but I really can't afford an attorney, but I think I need one. How do people find free legal help, essentially, usually?
Well, there are private attorneys who occasionally will take a pro bono case, but it's not usually you coming to them. It's them coming to you because maybe it's high profile or what have you. But Basically, if you're in jail, you're going to be appointed a public defender. It doesn't matter whether it's a misdemeanor or a major felony. Now, if you, say in the state court system, bond out of jail, then you might not have been appointed a public defender. So when you show back up in court, the judge is going to say, where is your lawyer? And if you say, I can't afford one, then you can fill out a pauper's affidavit showing that you cannot that you can't manage to pay an attorney on top of your other expenses. And traditionally, the state court judge may say, well, I want you to go talk to 3 lawyers and come back and tell me their prices and see if you still can't afford it, and then I will appoint you an attorney.
And I know we're out of time. Real quick, the pauper's affidavit, does that require documentation, like pay stubs, different things like that?
None of that. It's just a self-reported paper that you fill out at the court.
Okay. Alexis Gardner, we're going to miss you, but let's catch up in July when you're in D.C., see how you're doing.
I love that, Dave.
Okay. It's been grand. Thanks for being with us all these years, over a year and a half. Hundreds of athletes in Tulsa this week for the USA Gymnastics Championships. After the break, news on 6's Alyssa Miller joins us live with a look at all the action.